This is day 21 of our European tour, October 2009. We visited the city of Venice. We travelled up from the port of Petrus to the port of Ancona in Italy, where we disembarked from the Aegean pool and loaded our bags onto the Trafalgar bus and headed for the Park Hotel Villa in just outside of Venice. Then headed over to the island of Venice on a water taxi to the water taxi piers right near the St. Mark's Square.
The one passing us is part of the public transport of Venice. You can see the problem with the public transport sometimes is that it is overcrowded, even with a very high price.
Once the water taxi had negotiated a position, we got off onto the dock and then went for a walk along the foreshore of the St. Mark's Square. And here's a monument of Emmanuel II, built in 1887 to commemorate Italy itself. And we continued our walk around the promenade, if you want to call it anything. And there were so many water taxis and gift shops and obviously some food shops, and all these piers that you can walk out onto and get tours and cruises to the outer islands and across to the middle island. So we walked a little bit further down to the Gondola hire platform. Now, gondolas are a traditional flat-bottomed Venetian rowing boat suited to conditions on the Venetian lagoon, and it's steered and rowed by a gondolier, a man dressed in black pants and black and white shirt, or most of them do anyway, and he uses the oar in the back of the boat to scull or row and steer the boat. So he rowed and rowed and rowed, and we ended up going around the canals within the buildings of Venice, and I had no idea where it was going, we were going. So some of the tour group, we took photographs of them and they took photographs of us. Venice is a capital city of the Italian province of Veneto, which is a northern province, and it's built on 100 small islands in the lagoon area in the Adriatic Sea. There are no roads and just canals, including the Grand Canal thoroughfare. We didn't get to see that. The buildings are Renaissance and Gothic palaces, and the buildings are in a similar manner. Other features are the San Marco Square and San Marco Basilica, or Roman Catholic Church, and that's tiled with Byzantine mosaics. And there's a Campanile bell tower which you can climb up and have views of the city. And here you can see some workmen offloading or unloading equipment for building purposes. If you ever have looked at the James Bond movies or other movies with Venice in them, the waterline on the buildings was higher than it is now. You can see the doorways are only 1.5 foot off the waterline. So the story is that Venice is sinking. The name Venice comes from the Veneti people, who were residents of the area way back in the 10th century, and it has historical and strong meaning to the population of 55,000. There's 250,000 in that region, or that immediate area. Gondolier has to obviously duck his head when we go under these low-lying bridges, or walkways, whatever you want to call them, and there are different types and designs and quite interesting to look at by themselves. In the 20th century they bored artesian wells to feed fresh water in the factory areas around Venice, and that caused the subsidence of the islands, subsidence of Venice Island itself, until they banned artesian wells later on in the 60s, 1960s.
And everything that is...
If you watch just to the right, you'll see this speedboat going past. Obviously he has no passengers and heading off to collect some. And you'll see how he paddles the boat. I was surprised to see all the speedboats tied up alongside the buildings as well. Now, if you watch this video, you'll see him push off with his foot and getting the boat back into the centre of the canals. In 2003, the Prime Minister Berlusconi introduced the Moses project, or MOS project, to build floating dams around the Venice area to slow down the rising tide problem that was happening when it flooded during certain times of the year. But corruption and a current bill of more than $2 billion has slowed the project down. Have a look at this, rubbish chutes on the side of buildings. The tour itself went for more than 2 hours, and it was quite interesting. The time flew, but of course we didn't record too much of it, and I also cut it down to 6 minutes for this video. But in front of it, in the video there, you can see the bridge over the promenade, where everybody walks along the front waterline of the Venice city, and all the ferries and gondolas are lined up in a row.
She was putting some money in my...
Then we got back to the staging area, and you can see people from our tour group waiting for others to get off the gondolas, and when it was our turn we got off as well. And I'm sorry, but the tour was only about an hour. I made a mistake earlier. Then we went for a free time walk around the bridges and walkways between the lanes, and looked at all the scenery and canals. Some of the old buildings, and there was a lot of churches in this town. We didn't get to see a lot of Venice because, after all, we didn't have a week. Would not be enough. Then we went to St. Marco's Square and St. Mark's Basilica and the Doge Palace, and this is the Doge Palace. Quite an interesting looking building, built in the year 1340 in the Venetian Gothic style, and then it was opened in 1424, 60, 70, 80 years later. So we walked into St. Mark's Square and had a bit of a look around, and in front of us you can see the St. Mark's Basilica, which was built in 1094, and it's obviously a Roman Catholic church, and it's one of the most famous landmarks of the city of Venice. There's a bit of a story about some Italian or Venetian merchants who, in 1828, in the city of Alexandria in Egypt stole the body of Saint Mark, one of the apostles, and brought it across the seas to Italy. And there was a storm, and the story goes that the ghost of St Mark appeared to the captain of the ship and said, "Lower the sails," and the ship and merchants were saved. So obviously the St Mark's Basilica was named after one of the apostles. This building was St Mark's Campanile, which is a reconstruction of the original building, and you have to pay tickets to get in to go up to the bell tower and view the square, St Mark's Square, and the other buildings and landscapes surrounding the tower. Inside the basilica were the mosaics on the roof, but outside these frescoes displayed the walls and archways of the outer building. They're absolutely beautiful. St Mark's Square was first built in the 800s and went through some facelifts and stages, including some in the medieval style and also in the Renaissance period of the 1400s, and then later on in the Napoleon and later periods. There is a painting by Campanile in 1723 showing the building of the new pavement, which now covers the square. And here is the Campanile clock tower. I've made a second video of the city of Venice, and you can watch that. The video was produced by myself. It's the end of another exciting video of day 21 of our European tour, October 2009. We visited the city of Venice.